Good afternoon, Hank. How you doing?
Hey, Blaise, doing well over here. Ready for another great episode.
Yeah, how was your Thanksgiving?
Thanksgiving was awesome. I think I'm still full. And I can't wait for next Thanksgiving already. Only
Cool.
like 359 days left.
I mean, I had a great Thanksgiving with family in Massachusetts. Came home with COVID, but I'm getting better now, so it's good.
That's good. Safe travels back and forth.
Yeah,
Did you
awesome.
find any good bourbon up there?
I did. We're
Did
gonna
you?
pour. We're gonna pour. Well, see my
Yeah.
find was from up there.
Yeah.
Here's
Yeah,
what
let
we
me see.
found. This
Yeah.
is-
The Henry McKenna 10.
yeah, and what's
Good one.
cool? This has got a date of 10/17/12.
Oh, wow.
What did I say? 10/17/12. Yeah. So it's actually an 11 year
Wow.
I got for
That's-
a reasonable amount. Massachusetts, my favorite liquor store up there always seems to have this, so I snatched the bottle.
Okay.
So what do you
Well,
got today?
This is again one of my favorites. This is a Kentucky Owl Confiscated. They have a little story about this. They say in 1916, just prior to Prohibition, the entire Kentucky Owl inventory was seized by the federal government, never to be seen again. Confiscated, Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey is a tribute to the vanished barrels of bourbon and to lost opportunities lost. So this is distilled and bottled by Kentucky Owl LLC, and it is delicious.
Never heard that one. That's a
Very
new
good.
one. So I want to see how this. I've had this before. Oh man, this stuff smells
Cheers to you.
great. Cheers.
Cheers to Thanksgiving.
Like vanilla, real smooth smell there.
A lot of oak in mine. It's such a good taste.
This is touch of oak, not a lot. Actually, a little citrus,
Mm-hmm.
caramel, vanilla. It's so smooth. I don't know what the proof is on this
I
stuff.
love Henry McKenna.
Forget. I mean,
That is a great go-to. You can't go wrong with it.
yeah. It's 100 proof, but it doesn't drink like 100 proof at all. It's really smooth. That's
So
why I like it.
mine is 96.4. It probably drinks like 106, 107.
Really?
It's got a little spice on the back end. So,
So how would you rate that on a scale of 1 to 10?
oh, it's up there for me.
Really?
I would say 7 or 8.
Yeah, I'd rate this stuff a 9. I like this. This is just easy drinking.
Yeah.
Whether you're a seasoned bourbon drinker or you're a newbie, you'll like McKenna 10 year.
Well, I'm glad you got that find while you were up in Massachusetts over the holiday. But I think what I and everyone out there really want to know now that we've been tracking this story for about a month, have you received the magical package of cheap bourbon from what was the place called?
Glenn's Barrels.
Glenn's Barrels. Yeah. What? So you purchased this thing around November 8th.
Mm-hmm.
You got in touch with the guy. He promised that you would get tracking information on about the 24th.
Supposed to ship the 21st and be here by the 24th.
24th, okay? We're looking at the 29th right now, so plenty of time. What has happened?
No confirmation. No order. And I sent him another email 2 days ago asking on the status. No response. So I'm ready to start posting nasty stuff on their Facebook site and see if I get a response maybe. Like, is anybody in there? Are you a real company?
So
Will
I
I get my
would say-
order?
I would say for the viewers out there, maybe stay away from Glenn's Barrels.
For now.
And
Unless-
if you see inexpensively priced but highly sought after bourbon online,
Right.
probably stay away from it.
Probably.
Probably too good to be true.
Lesson learned. That takes me back to my first bicycle I ever bought.
Yeah.
I bought on eBay, right?
Uh-huh.
It was a Trek used from a guy in Vegas. This is a quick story. So I think it was $1,250, right? First, this is the early days of eBay. This goes back a ways. So I bought it, and the next day I asked the guy, so can you confirm the shipment on my order that I bought last night? He goes, what order? I didn't see you bought it yet. I'm like, what do you mean? I did a, what's the wire transfer
Oh, geez.
back in the days? I didn't get a transfer. Like, what? Well, a week later, I tracked it down. Somebody got my transfer to England of my money.
Oh my gosh.
No bike, no
You get it
transaction.
back?
Nope. Never got it back. Never got the bike.
Oh my gosh. So what are you gonna do here? Are you gonna make a claim? What are you gonna do with Glenn's barrels?
I don't know. I got to get creative. I got to drink some more of this McKenna. Maybe it'll come to me what I got to
All
do.
right. All right, fair enough. Well,
So
lessons
anyway.
learned. And I'm glad you had a Thanksgiving. So what are
Yeah.
we talking about first today?
Today's first topic, we're talking about our favorite bike brands. This could be a lengthy conversation, but we'll try to keep it within reason. You want to go first, or I'm thinking we discuss. Go back. What bikes have you had in your history? Why have you bought them? What's been the pros and cons of that brand that you bought? I thought would be a good
Okay.
thing to do.
So it depends whether you're talking about frames or drivetrains or wheels or
Complete
what.
bikes. Just think about you bought a bike, whether it was new or used.
I mean,
What was
gosh,
your experience with that company, that brand?
my favorite bike all time. I've had a number of Cervelos. I am a
I was saying,
Cervelo
let's
loyalist.
start. What's your top three, and then we could talk about history a little bit. What would be your top three
So for the road and
in general? It doesn't have to be.
triathlon,
It could be any kind of bike.
I got to go Cervelo
Mm-hmm.
for the road. For the mountain bike, I'm gonna go Orbea.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, and for the gravel bike, I'm gonna go 3T. How about that?
Oh, so you got three different ones. Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool. My top three would be Specialized, which is the majority of the bikes I've had. I had Cannondale, my first bike, and then recently Salsa.
Mm-hmm.
So those are my three.
You
So
do
three,
love your salsa cutthroat. I know
yeah,
that.
I do. Three different bikes, six different brands. So that's good.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about those three brands and why you like them, what experience you had with them, good and bad.
I've had a number of Cervelos through the year. I would consider myself kind of a Cervelo loyalist, although I don't have one now. The Cervelo is actually my first performance kind of race road bike,
Right?
as well as my first triathlon bike. So I started with a Cervelo Soloist. If you remember those, they had this seat that you could flip around for a more aggressive triathlon position or back for a road position.
So that was a tri bike?
No, it was a road bike, but it
Road
was
bike.
super aero. It's still one of the best aluminum bikes I think ever made. Way ahead of its time in terms of aerodynamics and etc. At that time, I also had a P2C triathlon bike, which was a carbon bike. That was my first carbon bike. Wonderful bike. I did an Ironman on that thing and did a ton of training and races on
That
that.
was Cervelo too?
Yep.
Yep.
And then of course my favorite bike all time was my S5, which
Yeah.
absolutely love. That S5, I have never. It was super stiff. Okay, so for those that like a more compliant ride, maybe not the bike for you.
Mhm.
But I have never felt such
Climbing.
an immediate power transfer on that thing.
Yeah.
And you didn't even have to try. That thing just flew. Like you could barely pedal. The race it's not the ride that we do almost annually, the Tour de Frederick here in Maryland. My best time ever was on that bike. I did it alone that day because I had to get back. I was throwing my wife a 40th birthday.
Remember that.
And I had to plan the whole thing. And meanwhile, I had to do the 62-mile ride in the morning before I did that. And I was in a rush. So, I mean, I put pedal to the metal and that thing just flew. And I probably finished that ride probably a half hour, 45 minutes faster than any other time I did it. Love that bike.
I only ever rode a Cervelo once. I rented it in Colorado years ago. I think it was is it the S3? Like just a step below yours?
Yeah.
Sort of like a tarmac frame. Yep. And I rode up Lookup Mountain. And it just, it was a fun climber. It was light, sprightly, rigid, but fast.
They're magnificent bikes. They're long in the top tube, and they are a little stiff. But I mean, they are performance bikes through and through for sure.
Yeah, cool.
How about your Specialized? Tell me about your Specialized.
You know, I have a long history with Specialized. I'll go back. My first bike was a Cannondale. 613 aluminum carbon fork. I think it had maybe a seat post. That was a great bike. I think I had it for 3 years. I sold it to a guy in Minnesota for what I paid for it 3 years later. It was a pretty bike. It was the old glitter blue, white and silver. Nice bike. Then I went to carbon. So then I migrated to Specialized. I had a Tarmac SL2, I think. And I was riding not far from where I live now in March of the year. Picked up a twig, came down and snapped the frame on the down to frame back to the real axle because I had the what do you call it, the Garmin cadence sensor on there, and it grabbed it and just snapped the frame. Well, Specialized did what they call their crash warranty replacement, so I was able to get a Tarmac SL3 S-Works, which was, you remember that bike? It was the red, white, and black one I had with the Rovo wheels.
Yep.
So I love that bike. And then, unfortunately, like 5 years later, I was cruising through downtown, my hometown in Westminster. I think it was Saturday weekend. And some lady decided to pull into the coffee shop and ran me off the road into a big oak tree. I was okay, but cracked the frame on my...
Oh, my
God.
God.
It was about a $6,000 bike. And
yeah,
the bugger was I was out of work. So I'm taking away my only thing that was getting me through that time where I wasn't working. I didn't have the money to go get it rebuilt. I took it to the original Specialized dealer, and they wouldn't do anything for me. Took it to a guy up in Trenton, New Jersey, and he did a crash replacement for me. And, their crash replacement policy's great. They don't give it to you for free, but you're getting a frame that's maybe 30% of the original cost. So if it was a $6,000 bike, you're getting it for $2,000 maybe or whatever.
That's fair.
So second time around, I get another crash replacement. And this time he let me test out a Tarmac SL3, which I got on. I was like, wow, that's nice. I was trying to figure out what to get for a replacement. Then he gave me this Venge, and I took the Venge out. I remember up by Princeton campus. And it was like, no comparison. The Tarmac was like, that's a nice bike. But the Venge, that baby just likes to go fast. I was like, I want the Venge. Give me the Venge.
I remember you on that bike, yeah.
So I had that, I put 21,000 miles on that Venge over, I don't know, 10 years. Sold that to a guy locally here in Frederick a couple of years ago. Then I got the Specialized Crux. That got me into gravel in 2018. I bought that from a guy in Nashville where my son was going to school. He was racing for Specialized, so it was in immaculate shape. This is a funny story. I saw it on Facebook. I think I bought it on Marketplace. And I walked into his house in East Nashville, and it was like neater and nicer than any bike shop. Every tool was in the perfect place and everything. I was like, oh, this guy's taking care of this bike. So I got that for a steal. I think it was like $1,500 for an 017 Crux, tram red. So that's what got me into the gravel thing. By then I was down here riding the C&O a lot more. And then I migrated in the last 2 years to Salsa and got my Cutthroat. Had a 2020. And then here's another case. By the way, Salsa gives you a lifetime warranty on their frames.
Oh, wow.
So I reached out, tried to find the guy at Unbound this year. He wasn't there. I couldn't believe Salsa wasn't on Unbound. But anyway, finally got through to somebody at Salsa, a guy named Joe. And I said, hey, I love the bike. I love that bike. It was like a lime green color, but the paint was fading almost to white and only on the left side of the frame, which was really weird. And he said, if you want to do an exchange, we'll do it. Gave me a brand new bike, zero cost. I mean, it cost me $300 to rebuild it, but that's not a cheap, inexpensive bike either.
To have some paint problems with it.
It was 18 months old. And I had 8,000 miles on it already, so I got a new frame for nothing after I rode 8,000 miles. So I'm a fan of Salsa. I'm a fan of Specialized for those reasons. I mean, if you ride as much as we do, I might ride a little more than the average person, but I don't think so. But anyway, it's good to have a brand that stands behind you, I think. a brand that's innovative, up with the times on their technology. They're always improving their bikes.
Yeah, I mean, fortunately, I haven't had any of those issues with my frames, knock on wood.
You're lucky.
I pretty much just get to the point, which is usually around like a year and a half, where I just want to try something new. Now, with me, I usually don't buy new. I almost never buy new. I usually try to find a good used deal because, after people ride bikes for 2 or 3 years, they're looking to get the hottest new thing. And I don't really care. That's fine with me. In fact, some of the technology, I like the older technology, like I like rim brakes and QR skewers on my road bike still.
I had quick release on my Crocs. That was the last year they had quick release. So
now I can get a great deal on these performance bikes that were around in 2015 that people don't want anymore, but they have the technology that I want. So, and I'm handy with bikes, so I just build them up myself anyway, and I just put the parts on them that I want anyway. So
you're the component king when it comes to bikes. You're the component king when it comes to bikes.
Yeah,
switching components up constantly.
I just like to try a little bit of everything, and
a little,
just a little, a lot. But you were talking about it costing $300 to build up your bike. Every time I try something new, I save that money that I can put towards a new bike. So that's the way I look at it. Now, I thought where you might be going with this conversation was not complete bikes, but I know there are pretty strong loyalties and differences amongst people when it comes to drivetrains. Some swear by Shimano.
Yeah.
Some swear by SRAM. Which team are you on?
I had SRAM. Well, I think my first bike was Shimano years ago. Then I got Specialized. I got SRAM. And I had SRAM with all through Specialized. With every Specialized bike I had. They all had SRAM. SRAM Red, SRAM Force, typically. Now, the Cuddy was Shimano GRX 800. And that was a little change. It took me a week to get used to it, but I've been happy with Shimano. So I really can't say there's been a negative for me on either one. I've never had the digital shifting like you do on, I think, 1 or 2 year bikes, but I'd love to switch over to digital shifting one day.
The electronic?
Yeah, the electronic. But so I don't have a beef either way. Never really had an issue. Maybe it's because I'm not working on it. My mechanic is.
Here's what I know. So for mechanical sets as opposed to electronic sets,
right?
I have both. I prefer the SRAM because I like the very distinctive hard click. When you get the shift. It's a very much harder, more certain click.
That's true.
Some people really like the smooth softness and silkiness of the Shimano, and it certainly does have that. So it just depends if you like that really hard tactile confirmation of the shift, or if you like the smooth, gentle, buttery shift.
And again, the type of riding you're doing. Again, it comes down to, you're on the roads, you're climbing a lot, you're shifting a lot. Like me, if I'm on a flat all day, I'm not shifting a whole heck of a lot.
But best group set ever, I think, was probably the SRAM Red 10-speed.
Yeah.
I believe it's the lightest group set out there.
Yeah.
And it just functionally, just magnificent.
It lasted pretty good too.
Though. I know a lot of people love those drivetrains.
I've never had Campy. Here's a question for you. What was I going to say? If you were to buy your next bike, which I know with you is next month, what brand would you consider outside of what you've had previously? If you were to try a new brand, who would it be and why?
Well, I'll use an example that I actually did. Like I mentioned in the previous episode, I'm buying this new brand of bike called Elves. I think it's Elves or it's Elvis or something along those lines. I don't even know. But going outside my comfort zone a little bit there, and one of these episodes, I'd like to go through the process of how I ordered it. Yesterday, so just a little bit about this bike. I mentioned before, I bought it online, and relatively inexpensive for this aggressive aero bike, relatively light bike, $1,300. Custom paint any way you want to do it. And I'm using it as a business marketing thing, so I got the Henry Martin Law logos all over it, and they could very easily just slap that stuff together, put it in a box, and send it to me. I get about the third email from these people yesterday because they're keeping in constant communication with me about the process.
Really?
The representative says, listen, we were putting the logos on the inside of the fork, and I just want you to know that the hole where the housing goes through for the disc brake, it's right in the middle of one of the labels. Is that okay?
Wow.
I mean, to that degree, they are looking
Wow.
out for customer satisfaction, which I was really impressed with. And I said,
That's pretty cool.
yeah, I mean, I definitely expect that if there's a hole there, that's the hole has to be there. But thank you for reaching out. I mean, you could have just slapped it on there, not cared, put it in a box and sent it to me. So
That's
so
pretty
far,
cool.
my experience with them has been a 10 out of 10. I could not be any more pleased. But so to answer your question, I guess Elves would be the answer because that's what I'm actually doing for a road bike anyway.
I might think about that for like a gravel specific kind of bike. But mine, in the back of my mind, you know, I've been looking at bikes a lot. When I was at Unbound, I saw all the bike manufacturers. They were all there. And one I think I would seriously consider is Canyon for another gravel bike.
I have a Canyon road bike.
Yeah, they're direct to manufacturer.
Yep.
So their cost is in line. I don't know what their warranty is on their bikes. That's something I would check into. But I have a friend from Vermont who was down this summer with the Grizzle, is it? The gravel Grizzle.
Mm-hmm.
And he was flying on that bike. I turned him on to the old Loudon Luxury gravel, and he loved it so much the next morning he got up and did it again. But he was barreling down the roads on that Grizzle.
Well, you liked my Canyon road bike too when we were up in Pennsylvania.
My neighbor across the street was just doing a triathlon on the Canyon road bike too. So
and the funny thing is, I didn't even realize it when I mentioned the brands, but Cervelo was my number one. 3T was my number one for gravel.
Mm-hmm.
And they both incorporate the engineers for Cervelo. So Vrooman, I believe it is the engineer for both of those brands.
Oh, really?
So,
I didn't know that. That's cool.
The 3T Explorer is what I have for gravel, and I have the Race Max with the wheel cut out and the whole deal.
Right.
I love that bike. I've put a ton of miles on that bike.
And what are your favorite wheel sets? If you had to pick your top one,
Chinese carbon. You know that.
You know what mine is? Starts with H, right?
Hunt.
Yep.
All the time. You're hunting for hunt wheels all the time.
I've been looking at a pair right now lately. I'm dying to pull the trigger because they're like 20...
Every time we talk, that's what you say.
I know.
For a pair of hunt wheels, I'm just waiting to pull the trigger every single time.
It's just a matter of when, you know. So anyway, I guess we'll hop off that topic. And we're running a little short on time.
Well, you know,
anything else?
I would like to hear what our listeners' favorite brands are. If you can put a comment in the section below, or you know, if you're listening to the podcast, I think there's a place for comments there as well. But if you're watching the YouTube video, if you could put it in the comments, your favorite brands, we would love to hear.
Yeah.
And while we're talking to the listeners out there, if you could like and subscribe and even share the video, please do. We thank you for your support. It helps the channel out very much. We're trying to make this a success, so we can't do it without you. So if you could hit that like and subscribe button, that means a lot.
Yep. Oh, update. We're on Apple Podcasts. All 4 episodes. So like you said earlier, we can binge, get caught up on this craziness with these 2 characters anytime. So check us out on Apple as of today.
Oh, great.
Good news.
That is good news.
So our last topic we have is, this is something that I've seen heavily over the last 3-4 years. The migration of people leaving corporate America and flocks and going to be self-employed as small business owners. I mean, I think in the last 2 years, my core clients are families, small business owners, and self-employed. And in the last 2 years, the tail end of COVID, I've never gotten so many calls or referrals from people saying, hey, I really want to leave my job, you know, but I have coverage for my family through work. It's a pretty good deal. It's subsidized a little bit. But either the company I want to go to doesn't have insurance, or I want to start my own company. Mm-hmm. So people are really leaving. I forget what the statistic was I saw 6 months ago. I think pre-COVID, the number of self-employed or small business owners compared to corporate America was like 13% in America, which is a pretty big number still. But I think now 4 years later, it's somewhere between 25 and 30%. That's a huge change in history where
That
people
is.
are leaving corporate America. I think because they want this hybrid lifestyle, and corporate America is not giving it to a lot of people these days. So they're saying, I've talked to a lot of people that had great jobs and they're like, after COVID, they want me to come back in the office. Oh, I'm not going back in the
They
office.
want to be able to shoot podcasts in the middle of the day.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Well, I
you
can
know,
tell you my experience. I went through that. Now, my transformation was pre-COVID,
right,
but I was working in big firms for most of my career, and kind of I got to the point where I didn't need the gray beard looking over my shoulder. I got to the point where I could develop my own business, and kind of got sick of having to go in the office every day and deal with the office politics and the
right,
whole deal. And I was always entrepreneurial at heart anyway. The
right,
funny thing about it is for years I'd be sitting at my desk doing my work and thinking, man, wouldn't it be cool to open up my own business? But what kind of business could it be? And I'm just like, should I open up bike shop? Should I never once
right.
thought for whatever reason to open up my own law firm, which apparently I'm an idiot. But eventually it did hit me, hey, I could just do this on my own. I don't need to do this in a firm. And so I took off. You helped me with insurance, which for
Mm-hmm.
me was also my biggest hurdle because my wife is also self-employed.
Right,
I was always in charge of bringing the benefits in.
right.
So the health insurance was the biggest benefit I
It's a
was
big
concerned
nut
with.
for
And
people.
so
Yeah.
you helped me with that.
Yep.
And once I knew I could get over that hurdle, I was out, man. And I'm not looking
Mm-hmm.
back. And then COVID hit and it only reinforced what I had already done. I had set up my
Mm-hmm.
business to be primarily a remote business anyway, where,
Right,
people email and call and Zoom, or back in those days, it was really Skype more than anything or FaceTime.
right,
But, and I have an office space where I can meet people, but typically I don't go there. And I work remotely just like all these people are doing now, and it's worked
right.
fantastically. And it worked. The fact that I already had it set up going into COVID just made for this seamless I didn't skip a beat through all of
Yeah,
COVID. So I get it, man. I mean, we're able, you and I, some days if we're not slammed with work, we at
right,
10 o'clock we say, hey, let's go for a bike ride and catch some lunch,
right.
and
Get,
we talk and we
still
chit
work
chat.
later in the day after our bike ride. It's
Yeah,
like, so
um,
what?
it's it's a great way of life, and it's a great, especially for me having a young family.
Right.
My younger son plays hockey and is traveling all the time, so I can never do what I do now if I was in a traditional firm setting.
Yeah, when I think about back when I was raising my kids, I mean, when they were young, I was working, and I did this for 23 years as my first job. I drove 2 hours to work one way each day and back home. And then I would drive around during the day because I was a regional guy, operations guy. And I was putting 50,000 miles a year on my car
Wow.
all the time. I mean, I was leaving at 6:30 in the morning, getting home at 7:30 at night. So think about
Hmm.
that. I wasn't around for my kids. I mean, my wife would throw the kids at me when I got home after that 12, 14-hour day, which I didn't
Yeah.
mind because I was hungry to see them.
Right.
But I mean, if you can come up with that life work balance, I wouldn't trade it in a heartbeat. And then I worked for a company in New York City for 5 years, and same deal. I was riding the train. I mean, my whole career, unlike you, maybe I wasn't at a desk. I would go to a different city every day. Typically, I had 19 branches or so. So I was always on the go, which I loved, the
Right.
diversity of that. So the corporate job for me was the fun part was the leadership role I had, developing other people to be good leaders. I thrived at that. That's not an easy thing. I was talking to somebody this weekend. Leadership's not an easy thing to develop. I always felt I had a God given tool from my values of my parents. It came easy to me to develop people and get stuff done, make a company profitable, because it's all about how you create that culture. And that's what I thrived on doing. So doing that for years was fun, but when I left that job, when I got laid off the second time and got into health insurance 11 years ago, I'll never forget sleeping 8, 9 hours instead of 4, 4.5 a night. I was like, wow, how the heck
Yeah.
did I do that?
Right.
I was like going on adrenaline for
Yeah.
5 years. Working now, my kids had grown up then, so it wasn't a deal. But I think back all that time, if I could have spent 30% of my time to be around the kids more than just the weekend. Now I didn't work weekends, so that was good.
Yeah.
But And then like you, I was doing Zoom calls with the healthcare 3 years before COVID. So for me, again, it wasn't a transition when COVID hit. I had been on Zoom for 3 years.
Hmm.
So not a big shift for me, as it was for a lot of people and a lot of companies,
Yeah.
obviously. So,
Yeah. I mean, commercial real estate is just dying right now, though, because people just don't want to go
yeah,
back to work. And
yeah.
there's so many more opportunities now. I mean, YouTube influencers and Lyft or Uber drivers. There's so many more contractor or consultant
Oh,
opportunities now.
yeah. Yeah.
All you need now because of technology is really a laptop and a phone,
Right.
which
Right.
pretty much everyone has at this point, and you can set up your own business. And I
Work
work
wherever you
in
want.
my business, I work with a lot of therapists. And
Right.
that is an industry that's changing drastically because the former model
Uh-huh.
was always this group practice model where you'd have the founding therapist or whatever, manager,
Right.
and then you'd bring in whatever, 10 or so associates, pay them as contractors, and they would, do all the work for you and you would get the money and that's how it worked.
Right.
Well, as soon as COVID hit, especially, and they changed the law a little bit to allow therapists to do more remote
Remote
and virtual
work.
therapy.
Yep.
I mean, every therapist coming out of school with a laptop and a phone said, "Well, why the heck am I going to
Work for
hand
them.
over 40-50%
Yeah.
over to the manager? I'll just take my laptop and phone and go out on my own."
Right.
And I have seen a total change, total shift in business model in that
Right.
industry, more than any other type of client that I have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think people and families are really struggling to figure out how to have a much more balanced lifestyle, and work around their life than life allow
Yeah,
a tiny bit of the work take care of the majority of their time. Like I said,
yeah.
it did for me. So,
And people are quick to blame millennials for all sorts of things, and
yeah,
that's
right.
fine. And qualities and characteristics and whatever they want to say about millennials.
Right.
I'm just barely miss millennial, but say what you will, the millennials totally changed. It was almost like an industrial revolution. It was a revolution of the workplace that the
Yeah.
millennials did. They put their foot down and said, "No more 9 to 5, no more living in a cubicle every
Yeah.
single day. We're going to do it differently."
They
And
forced corporate America to revamp the way they treated an employee,
yeah,
really. If you think about it. I mean, compared to the older dogs like me that was a 9 to 5, this is the way it always was. Our parents did the same thing. And now, how do I treat this person? What makes them tick? Is
yeah,
maybe not money, but it's
yeah,
time with family is more
right,
important than spending
right.
10 hours in the office all day long.
Yeah. So
Um,
thank you to the millennials for changing the world. And thank you to technology for allowing us to do it.
yeah. So it's I'd say the last thing is, in the last 2 years, I've been helping so many families. Here's another thing, just on the insurance side, that health insurance has gotten expensive. Every year it goes up for everybody, and companies are no different. So they're paying on that pool of people the cost. So they've gotten creative in raising deductibles like the individual plans on the marketplaces and pushing the cost down to the spouse and children of a family. They're going to subsidize you, the employee, and give
Uh-huh.
you a reasonable plan through the company plan. But they're charging the full cost of insurance, sort of like Cobra for the rest of your family, which is the true cost of the insurance. And I find families in their 30s, mid 30s, 40, paying anywhere from 1,000 to 1,500 a month for the wife and kids. I mean, for two kids and a spouse, which is
Yeah.
crazy. So they don't know this, but I can many times peel them off to a private plan and reduce that cost by hundreds of dollars a month, and that's thousands
Yeah.
of dollars a
Well,
year. So,
yeah, I told you, I mean, my last firm job on a subsidized plan, I
right.
was paying in $1,400 a month every month. And I was worried that it was going to go way up going out on my own.
And
But
that was
you
what,
actually
six
helped
years
me
ago,
out.
6 or 7 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. And
You
I was,
imagine what it is today. It's probably almost 2 grand or 1,800.
yeah. And
You
you
know?
got me a policy where I was paying about $600 every single month.
Yeah.
For the past 6 years.
$5,000 a year times 6 years is what? That's a couple change, right?
I owe you a few burgers.
That helps with your hockey travels, right?
Right. That's right. And bourbon.
So, yeah, right. And bourbon. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, that's an interesting topic. So what do we got happening next week's show?
We got 3 good ones next week. So next week we are going to, with the holiday season coming up, we're going to talk about some great bourbon gifts that you can get for the favorite bourbon lover in your life for the holidays.
Are you going to have like 3 brackets, high, middle, and eco present?
I haven't thought that far in advance.
Okay.
Don't give me that much credit. Okay. We'll work on it throughout the week.
All right,
We'll see what we come up with.
Yep.
We're also going to talk about what's going on in the bike industry lately. You know, there's a lot of word on the street that it's kind of crumbling and failing, and they really didn't pay attention to the old principle of supply and demand through COVID. Got a little high on their horse. So talk a little bit about that, and then you and I are just going to talk generally about what we're seeing in everyday life now in the economy and how things seem to be going, and what our outlooks are for 2024.
Cool. Sounds good. Christmas will be here before you know it.
Yeah. It's this is my busy time of year, and it's going to get cranked up here real soon. So
yeah, same here. Well, thanks. Good to see you today, Hank.
Yeah, you too, man.
Great to our audience for listening in, and please share and like with your family, friends, and business associates the show, and catch up with us on Apple Podcasts, like I said earlier.
And in the meantime, have some good bourbon.
Yeah.
Try this Confiscated by
I'm anxious to try that.
Yeah.
Swing on by and take a sip.
Thanks for joining us, everyone.
All right. Have a great one. Have a good week. See you later.